Hi, I'm Michael Lenz, host of Beyond the Headlines. On my next show, I'll be joined by Houtan Moaveni, Deputy Director of New York Sun. We'll discuss how New York Sun is working to create a self-sustaining solar energy market here in New York State. I'll see you then. Welcome to Beyond the Headlines. I'm Michael Lenz. On today's show, we're joined by Houtan Moaveni, Deputy Director of New York Sun. We'll discuss how New York Sun is working to create a self-sustaining solar energy market here in New York State when we come back. Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. I'm pleased to be joined today by Houtan Moaveni, the Deputy Director of New York Sun. Houtan, welcome to the show.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, people may know about New York Sun, they may have heard about it, but let's start by having you share with our listeners, our viewers, what's your specific role within the organization and what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Thank you. My name is Houtan Moaveni. I'm currently serving a dual role as the Deputy Director of New York Sun. I'm also one of the New York State Interconnection Ombudsman, working primarily with my colleagues from Department of Public Service and Utilities.
And so within that framework, what are you doing on a day-to-day basis? Are you out traveling to the communities? Are you down in Albany working? What do you do on it?
I would say I'll be traveling all over the state, traveling between New York City, Albany, and then we have projects all over the state. Recently, I've been traveling to different towns and villages and counties across the state and having the opportunity to have a better understanding of our local government needs.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of us are aware of the need or the concept of solar energy. Yeah. But Governor Cuomo has really stepped up the game in New York State. So tell us about his vision for reforming the energy needs in our state.
Yes, absolutely. New York has emerged as a national leader in fight against climate change. The most important component of New York renewable energy leadership is Governor Cuomo's Reforming the Energy Vision, or REV. REV seeks to fundamentally transform the state electric system by making it cleaner, more affordable, and more resilient. The goal of REV is to change the financial and regulatory structure to build a 21st century grid. As a power system electrical engineer myself, I have to say that for too long we have been reinvesting on an old central station-based system, which is not the grid that we are supposed to have today. A 21st century grid is hybrid, where we have both distributed energy resources and central station systems. Mm-hmm. And not to get too technical, but like electron can flow in more than one direction. But more importantly, REV is putting customer first by designing new initiatives to impact real people, by providing an opportunity to individuals and communities across New York State to play an active role in helping state achieve its clean energy goals. As a part of this strategy, state has set a goal of having 50% of our electricity come from renewable energy sources by 2030.
Yeah, and that's a pretty ambitious goal. And then even beyond that, I think you've got targeted emissions reducing them by 80% by 2050. So that's a very, very ambitious goal. But you're well on your way. What kind of funding are we looking at from the state level to make this all kind of happen?
So exactly, this is a fantastic goal. New York was the first state across the nation to have such a, to your point, aggressive goal of having 50% of our electricity come from renewable energy sources. We are fortunate to have $5 billion available to help state and communities across New York State accomplish our goal.
And so this is all related to what you had mentioned as the clean energy standard. Correct. So if you could tell our viewers what exactly is the clean energy standard?
So I think as a part of the state goal is that we are trying to bring down our electricity consumption with different energy efficiency measures, and we have clean energy goals of having 50% of our electricity come from renewable energy sources, including hydro, wind, and solar. Solar is a key component of Clean Energy Standard and Governor Cuomo's reforming the energy vision. In 2011, Governor made a historic commitment of nearly $1 billion to New York Sun in order to stimulate the marketplace and build a self-sustaining solar industry. Since 2011, solar in New York State grew over 900%. This includes projects of all sizes, from homes and small businesses to large factories, universities, and municipalities. There are over 600 solar companies across New York State that they currently employ over 8,000 New Yorkers. So we really look forward to continuing this growth. The amount of installed solar can power over 130,000 homes in New York State. But we have I think the good, interesting point is that we have the same amount of projects already in the pipeline that we are hoping and we are expecting to be operational by the end of next year. I would say this increasing of solar projects and the growth that we had in the energy sector affirms the Governor Cuomo's reforming the energy vision strategy to build a cleaner, more affordable and resilient system for all New Yorkers.
So when we talk about the renewable energy, as you mentioned, we're talking about multiple things other than solar.
Correct.
We're here to talk about solar today,
Yes.
specifically. So that's what New York Sun's role is specifically, correct?
Exactly. So New York Sun Initiative, I would say our goal is to first build a self-sustaining solar industry. Our capacity goal is to install 3 gigawatt of solar in New York State by 2023. So what we are trying to do is like lesson learned from other markets and other states. We don't want to necessarily have, I think, for the lack of a better term, I would say boom and bust in the market, that you see some activities as long as you have incentives, and as long as incentives are fully committed and exhausted, we saw no action in the market. So we have an eye toward making and building the market infrastructure in New York State in order to have a self-sustaining solar industry. As a part of our initiative, as a first step, we have, I would say we have taken major steps over the course of last couple of years in order to accomplish our goal. As a first step, we have designed an incentive program known as the Megawatt Block Program, which provides incentive on a first-come, first-served basis to New Yorkers until December 31st, 2023, or until funds are fully committed. So not go into details, but like we have divided state into different regions. We have declining blocks for the incentive rates and for, I would say, providing incentives for residential sector, what we call like a non-residential small commercial, and the larger scale system like a community solar projects.
Yeah, and I want to get into some of those very specific things, because there are specific things that you can do for not only local municipalities but also business owners, people that are homeowners. So let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, let's get into some more of those details.
Great.
Okay, stay with us. We'll be right back in just a minute. Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. I'm here with the Deputy Director of New York Sun, Houtan Moaveni, and we've been talking about the overall arching goal of Andrew Cuomo, our governor, to bring more renewable energy to New York State, and we're well on our way towards achieving that goal. Houtan, there are a lot of specific projects that you put in place to facilitate this overarching goal. So why don't we dive into some of those? In particular, I know we want to talk about the community solar project, because that's really an important part of this puzzle. So tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. In addition to residential and traditional commercial solar project, New York has had the opportunity to have a community solar as a new model to provide access to solar energy to all New Yorkers. This model is a game changer, I would say, primarily for 3 groups. First, for our lower and moderate income households, They have the opportunity now to go solar. The benefit of solar, I think you agree with me, should be available to people of all income levels. And the solar, now community solar now makes it possible. Mm-hmm. Second group, I would say, which I'm part of the second group, is like renters, that they may not own a house, but they would like to have access to solar. So community solar makes it possible. And finally, last group, let's say a homeowner, for whatever technical reason, they may not be able to install a solar system on their roof. And now they have a chance to actually go solar. So community solar makes it possible for members in a community to buy a fraction of the electricity that typical, let's say, 2 megawatt AC large solar project generates. Those customers will receive for the electricity that the system generates the credit on their utility bills at a given discount rate. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, 10%. So the members who are participating in a community solar project, they are all local, all of whom they are investing in their future by saving money and reducing the electricity bills, and at the same time making a significant contribution to the state's clean energy economy.
Yes, so just to have me understand this a little bit better. So if I'm a homeowner, I can have potentially have solar panels placed on my home, and I can get some credit for that. Mm-hmm. But if I'm not in a position to be able to do that, there are actually, I guess, community areas where you'll install the panels, and then I, as a homeowner, can participate in the use of that energy without having to necessarily put them on my home.
Well said, exactly.
How about that? See,
perfect.
Sign me up.
I'm waiting for the same thing in my own town and my own county. To as soon as we have a system fully operational, I would like to sign up myself. So for a typical large-scale project, we are talking about at least 400 households mm-hmm. that they would be able to share the benefit of the solar project. And we have about I want to say 800 megawatt of proposed community solar projects in the utility interconnection pipeline, as well as our incentive program. I think we're expecting this project to be fully operational by the end of next year.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of the, when somebody decides to participate in this, whether it's a municipality, whether it's somebody who's a private homeowner or a private building owner, there is a process they have to go through, correct? It's not that you have to go through approved contractors and builders. So how does that process work, just in kind of in a nutshell?
Exactly. Without going into details, New York Zone program takes the safety very seriously. We want to not only accomplish our goal of building a 3 gigawatt of solar and providing incentives, we wanted to have a healthy pace of solar development. So I think as you pointed out, our program have a quality control procedure in place, that we are looking at contractors and developers, solar developers, they want to do business in New York State. To the extent possible, we are trying to evaluate those systems and make sure those systems meet the minimum standard for the installation. So I think that's one area that I wanted to highlight. Mm-hmm. The projects, I think, as I mentioned, they are coming online. We are going, I would say, through the construction for most of these projects in the next couple of months for the community solar projects. And developers solar developers at the end, which is, I think I want to give you another terminology like this, the community solar sponsor, they will be signing up customers for having the opportunity to use a share of community solar projects, a fraction. There are different business models, like the individual households, they can either buy some capacity, let's say some number of panels, or they can just simply buy a fraction of the electricity that's generated from the system. There are different models out there that developers, our solar industry will be pursuing, I would say, shortly.
And there's a variety of options that somebody has. So if I'm a building owner and I have a couple of storefronts and I have the ability to put panels on my roof, versus if I'm a developer that's building a massive project, correct, and I have access to a lot of solar potential, you can work that through the process.
Exactly. And let me just say that New York is a home rule state. We have 1,600 jurisdictions with its own rules to zone land and permit construction. We understand some of our municipalities might have little to no experience in managing some of the larger projects. I would say primarily with the introduction of community solar. So to your point, we are talking about a residential project, a typical commercial project that you have one off-taker. If I installed on my house, like I would be the only customer, I would be the only off-taker, or like for a commercial project, if I installed on my own business, I would be the only off-taker. And then we have the community solar. So from our perspective, addressing soft costs is critical to maintain our market growth and achieve our goals by 2023 under New York Sun. To the extent possible, we are trying to educate our local government leaders on the nuts and bolts of solar development, and we are trying to provide tools, training, and expertise needed to bring solar to different communities and make sure our local governments are ready, what we call, I think the terminology is to become a solar-ready community. So what we have done, we have taken some steps. As a first step, we have developed a solar guidebook to help our local governments make decisions related to solar in their jurisdictions. The guidebook is a compilation of tools, information, and step-by-step instruction how to become a solar-ready community. The guidebook was developed in response to a demand from our local government for resources to help manage a growing number of solar projects. I would call our guidebook like a best practices. In addition to the guidebook, NYSERDA provides technical assistance to local governments to help them implement any or all chapters of the guidebook.
And I know that there are other specific things that you're doing for municipalities and for private businesses to try to make this a reality. So we want to talk a little bit about that, but let's take another quick break.
Great.
And we'll get to that after that. Okay, we'll be right back in just a minute. Thanks. Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines, continuing our conversation with Deputy Director of New York Sun, Houtan Moaveni. Houtan, we were talking before the break about the solar guidebook for local governments, because the process is out there, it's laid out, but I can imagine that some municipalities, as you said, you travel around the state and you visit these different municipalities, and you know that all the rules and regulations and zoning ordinances and requirements are all different. And anytime you bring something that's unique to the table, people go, well, wait a minute, how exactly are we going to make this happen? So you touched on the guidebook for local governments, which I think is a great resource to have. What are some of the other things that you're working on in terms of trying to help local governments and even the private sector get these things up and running? I know you'd mentioned the pilot toolkit, so let's talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Let me just start by saying that we respect that New York is a home rule state, and we totally understand that property tax is a major source of revenue for our local governments. Our job at NYSERDA is to provide information and guidance on energy issues, and communities across the state wanted our help on this very important issue of the property tax and solar and the execution of pilot. We take seriously the concern expressed by both local governments as well as private sector solar industry on how to fairly share the benefit of solar across all the community members. As the quick background, as a measure to promote renewable energy project, Section 487 of Real Property Tax Law exempts the added value of renewable energy projects from local property tax for 15 years. This law applies to the value that a solar system adds to the overall system, the overall property value. And it doesn't mean that a landowner with an installed solar system is exempt from all the other property taxes. However, some jurisdictions have opted out, or I would say like the law allows jurisdictions to opt out from the property tax exemption, which makes the added value of solar system fully taxable. Some jurisdictions have opted out in an effort to maximize the revenue from these projects. But by doing so, those jurisdictions may find out that they will not be able to collect any additional revenue because these projects will not be built at their full tax rate. Property tax can have a significant impact on overall project economics and inhibiting like the project development in some cases. The reality is these projects are not, solar projects are not financially viable at their full tax rate. So opting out can make a solar project more expensive and financially unviable, and can prevent solar development at the local level. Additionally, the law does not allow partial opt-out, which is what it means. Local government cannot generate tax on larger projects and while exempting the smaller ones. In other words, taxing jurisdiction cannot choose to tax large system and not the small ones. And so the impact is it's going to be potentially preventing solar developments at the local level. However, the law allows taxing jurisdictions to require an annual fee, or something is known as the payment in lieu of taxes or pilot, to essentially generate some tax revenue for the tax that would have been otherwise paid. The main purpose of payment in lieu of taxes or pilot is to reduce the tax burden and uncertainty for solar system owners, while preserving some of the foregone revenues that would have been paid in property taxes. I always say like a pilot is a very effective tool to generate comparable revenue without making solar cost prohibitive. Just as background, there are 33 states across the nation that they offer some form of tax exemption for renewable energy projects. 22 of those states are providing and exempting 100% exemption for renewable energy projects for 10 years and longer. I think this affirms that those states and communities across the nation recognize the significant financial impact pilot or exemption can have, and really the local benefit of a strong and robust clean energy industry. So in response to a lot of requests and demand from our local government, NYSERDA has developed a toolkit to assist local government in understanding and negotiating successful payment in lieu of taxes. From our local government leaders, I would say there are primarily two questions. First is, what are the key steps in order to negotiate pilot? And second one is, what's the fair amount to require for pilot for, let's say, a proposed solar project in their community?
And I would imagine, that from a developer's perspective, when they are thinking about a project, a big issue is taxes. Okay. So they go into the municipality and they understand that there's a certain tax rate, a certain amount that they're going to pay. But then they don't necessarily know that that tax rate could fluctuate. It could increase the following year, it could increase 5 years from now. So the pilot, the payment in lieu of taxes, essentially is the negotiation between the community and the private sector to say, we'll pay this amount over, or we may pay nothing for a certain period of time, and then we will pay this amount for an additional number of years. So at least when they're planning their project, they have a very specific number that they can say, this is what we know we can budget and this is what we're going to pay, as opposed to having this uncertainty of the tax rate. Now, the taxpayers from the other side of the coin might look at that and go, well, gee, I don't get a pilot, this isn't fair to me. But, and having been in local government, the advantages are that you bring jobs, you bring a significant payment that in lieu of taxes that you know you're going to have, that you're going to generate, and you increase the economic activity within your community. As an aside of that, by the way, with solar energy, you're actually creating a cleaner source of energy as well. So there's that added benefit.
I completely agree. And I think to just like build on that, when a solar developers wanted to take on a project, they must examine all the anticipated cost for the entire scope of a project. And some of these costs, to your point, are uncertain. And solar developers are looking at like a payment in lieu of taxes as a mechanism to reduce some of the tax uncertainties. So to the extent possible, they are looking at how they can move forward on a project, specific on those projects. So let me just wrap up here on the pilot toolkit. The pilot toolkit includes three parts. The first one is a resolution that available to our local governments in order to establish a legal authority to negotiate pilot. The second one is a contract or the actual agreement available that can be further customized to meet each jurisdiction's needs. And the third, which is like I would say the most important part of it, is we have developed a calculator to provide some rate guidance on different solar projects in different parts of the state and what local government officials can use as a starting point for the pilot requirement, or I would say even as a part of the negotiation. Not going into details, but like the actual calculator, we have a kind of a simplified version that provides and allows the local jurisdictions set a pilot rate for the entire jurisdictions. But if the actual local governments are interested in going and looking at each project specifically one by one, we have like the kind of a more comprehensive model that can work with the prospective solar developer to put in the number and come up with a reasonable pilot rate. I must say that this toolkit was developed in a collaborative process. We work fairly closely with assessment community, our county directors across New York State, representatives from solar industry. And it was designed in a way, I think you said it perfectly, to striking a right balance between generating some revenue, but at the same time make sure that the entire community would benefit from solar development.
Well, you're doing a great job, and we have to wrap up. We're just about out of time. I know that the Spa Solar Park was created over at the Saratoga landfill, and that's kind of a local win for us. It was a project that we took advantage of this old landfill and actually created a solar park, which we'll now be able to take advantage of here in Saratoga Springs. So, so kudos to you for your efforts on that as well. So that's going to wrap it up. I want to thank you so much for being a guest here. And if there's more information that people want, where should they go? What website should they go to?
So first of all, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. And we really look forward to partnering with our local governments. They can reach out to us directly on our website if they just simply Google New York Sun. We have a section that our local government officials can go directly in order to download the guidebook as well as request technical assistance. I promise you we'll get back to you within 24 hours as soon as we receive the request.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks again. And stay with me. I'll be right back in just a few minutes to wrap things up. I want to thank my guest today, Houtan Moaveni of New York Sun, and thank you for joining us. Join me next time here on Beyond the Headlines as we continue to talk with the business and political leaders who are shaping the news here in Saratoga Springs and the surrounding communities. Until then, for everyone here at Look Media, I'm Michael Lenz. Thanks for spending part of your day with us.